in those areas.
You're evading the key issue, and that is there is a memorandum of understanding for good reason. The memorandum of understanding, and you know the history of that because there was an issue about the way the two agencies worked, and the memorandum of understanding was meant to be part of repairing that. Is that a fair summary?
The MOU, when I arrived, Senator, had lapsed. What I took on board through asking, obviously, people, senior officers, what are our requirements? Where are we? Have we fulfilled all the government directions? Are there issues which are open, to which I may not be aware? One that was raised was the Miller Review, which said that there should be an MOU between CASA and ATSB, and there had previously been one for many years. As I said, it had lapsed. The government of the day accepted the Miller Review recommendations, so I directed legal at a time of which Dr. Alec at the time was the executive manager, to proceed to an MOU. So we produced that document in accordance with the Miller Review.
And you still don't acknowledge at this hearing that it would have been appropriate to release the Chamber's report to the ATSB. You still don't acknowledge that?
Well, Senator, as I say, I don't think the ATSB would have been influenced by that report, but I don't know that.
How do you know? Well, if you don't know that, why don't you just release it? Because it clearly would have been within the terms of your obligation under the MOU.
Well, as I say, Senator, and as Dr. Alec explained, if we had to take a report off it, it wouldn't be covered by the MOU. It's a case of taking the bigger picture view. At the time, I took that view. Given the circumstances we are in now, back to your hypothetical, if there was an accident and a report like that landed on my desk, considering that myself and my senior executive team consider that we're a long way down the road in renewing CASA, if that report arrived on my desk today, then I would be extremely concerned.
And you'd release it to the ATSB?
Release it to the ATSB, I think, would have to, and I still stand by this, would have to go to the point of whether the ATSB wanted the information. I'm very, very concerned, or not very concerned, I'm very cognizant of the fact that we don't want to contaminate their investigation when we are investigating it parallel but in totally different areas.
The MOU makes it very clear that there should be release of information that could assist the ATSB.
Or at least advice that exists.
Or release advice that it, thank you, Senator Fawcett, or at least advise that it exists. You did neither.
Well, Senator, whether if you just excuse me for a second while we look at the paragraph in particular.
4.4.6.
Thank you. Well, whether this report falls into that category, looking back on it, you could put it that way. At the time, I did not see it that way.
Can I suggest to you that CASA as an organisation made some conclusions about who was to blame for this and focused on the pilot, and I hear very clearly what Senator Fawcett said in his opening remarks. But you then decided conveniently, or for whatever reason, the Pellair management, the fact that Pellair didn't even have an appropriate fuel policy seems to have been ignored. The whole focus was on the pilot rather than the systemic issues that led to the ditching of the aircraft off Norfolk Island.
No, Senator, I reject that. The investigation and the report and the conclusions are what they are. You have the report, you have the special audit report, etc. Our accident report was done with no intent whatsoever of a predetermined outcome. That is the outcome that we achieved. You have in front of the committee numerous emails, I think in excess of 600, some of which will show you the trail of discussion between all our officers. Now, you will find in those, and talking about what the outcome is, you will find in those people, different CASA officers, talking to other CASA officers about possible lines of inquiry. None of that was directed other than what the Accident Liaison Investigation Unit and the associated operational staff and others who carry out the investigation do. There's been no interference, there's been no predetermined outcome.
But there were meetings between CASA and the ATSB, which is a standard thing in terms of these accident investigations, that's right, in relation to this matter?
They are required, Senator, yes.
They are required,
correct.
that's right. No, I'm not suggesting there's anything inappropriate with that. Mr Farquharson, you were part of those meetings?
Periodic meetings, yes, Senator. The scheduled periodic meetings.
And at the previous hearing there was an issue raised, and I don't have the email in front of me, but there was an issue raised about the whole issue that there was a real conflict amongst flight operations inspectors as to what should have been done in those circumstances, how even amongst CASA officers they seem to be split, fairly evenly split as to what they would have done in those circumstances. Is that something that was provided to the ATSB?
I'll just let Mr Farquharson answer in a second, Senator. The email which refers to as our FOIs being evenly split, we have...
Or words to that effect.
Yeah, yes. We have in the organisation 96 people who are eligible members of the Australian Federation of Airline Pilots. The sample size that was used to determine that our FOIs, quote unquote, were evenly split, they asked 6 FOIs in the Brisbane office what they thought. 6 out of 96, or 96 people eligible. We don't have 96 FOIs, but 96 people who are eligible to be members of the AFAP. So it's a bit grandiose, I think, and not criticising you, Senator.
No.
I mean,
Well, I'm relying on the email,
Absolutely.
the CASA email that showed that there was an issue and that you could have ended up with egg on your face if it goes to the AAT.
That email is taken out of a very long train of emails, Senator, and I agree.
Well,
As I say,
you're not suggesting it's taken out of context, are you?
No, Senator, I'm saying it's out of a long trail of emails, and which you have,
Yes.
and which will indicate, and I'll let Mr Farquharson answer if he wishes to elaborate on this, the issues around this. Looking at that specific email, our FOI population is split 50-50. That was the 50-50 split of the FOIs who were asked.
So 3 each way?
3 each way. That's correct,
Mr.
Senator.
McCormick, though, the issue is that from the committee's perspective, as we look at the comments made about Captain James and his decisions, and the reason the critical safety issue was downgraded was that your contention is that the combination of training, regulations, etc., I think the 3 points you made, should have led him to make the appropriate decision. And so you said that background, if he was qualified, he'd done his ATPL, etc., he should have made the right decision. I assume that all of those 6 FOIs had been through the same training system, had their ATPL, and therefore should have reached a common conclusion.
Do you want to talk about this?
You can't apply one standard to Captain James and then seek to apply a different standard to folk in your own organisation just because only 6 were asked as opposed to 96.
Well, I take what you're saying, Senator, yes, but the thing is that not only was it 6 split 3 either way, there were 3 from general aviation and 3 from the old air transport group, and they split evenly on those lines. The GA inspectors thought one way, the air transport people thought the other way. Now that indicates that there is work to be done in that area. And there is no doubt whatsoever that we've looked at it, we've continued to work at it, and that information is before the committee as well. The bottom line of that outcome, and I'm not going to Captain James per se, the bottom line outcome of that is, do we regulate and say, when you receive a weather forecast that indicates the weather is deteriorated below the alternate landing minima and you do not have an alternate, do you divert? And we've discussed that in length, I think, Senator, and in our submissions previously.
And the Bureau of Meteorology wasn't accurate. I think the evidence also shows that what Captain James relied on was the best information available at the time, which itself raised issues of the accuracy of that weather forecast.
Well, to go back to the weather reports and dates, and the basis I'm using here is the ATSB report, though I think it is the similar times and fuel states are referenced in our report. You'll find that when Mr James, Captain James, is aware that the weather had deteriorated below the landing minima, he had other options available to him.
Can we come back to the issue of direction? The main point we've been wanting to make is the issue of disclosure. And I recognise that you haven't accepted that, but that point has been raised. In terms of the shaping or influencing of the report, both the one done within CASA and ATSB's report, you made the comment that the committee does have in fact, I can't remember how many boxes of documents CASA provided. It was entertaining reading for a number of hours and days. Thank you.
Hundreds of hours.
I should have imagined, yeah.
Did I hear you correctly, Mr McCormick, that you said that there was no direction from management within CASA to the people conducting the investigation as to where they should be shaping the outcome of their investigation?
Your report.
To my knowledge, that's correct, Senator.
Can you... If we asked to release an email where a request was made that the report focus on the pilot's actions and potential legislative breaches as opposed to other factors, would that perturb you?
Well, it's not possible for me to answer that question, Senator. I don't know in what context that email was sent. I don't know where it stands. I don't know anything else about it other than to say, if you have some email you wish to bring to my attention, I can give you more information about it. Without knowing the content, I'm sorry. I can't enlighten you.